Welcome to the Brute Strength Podcast, bringing you worldwide experts from all areas of health and fitness. We cover training, nutrition, coaching, and mindset. Welcome your host, strength and conditioning coach, 2012 and 2013 CrossFit Games champ, Michael Cagney. Mind, body, brute.
Welcome back. My name is Mike Cagney, and you're listening to the Brute Strength Podcast. This week's guest is Zach Rocheleau. Zach is the owner of the Flexible Dieting Lifestyle, and a lot of people consider him to be the food porn king of the universe. He's got thousands of amazing photos and videos on Instagram of him cooking macro-friendly foods, and that's how he got this title. I was introduced to Zach several months ago through a mutual friend here in Austin, and I've come to respect him both as a business owner and a human being in general. Obviously, on the show, we talk about flexible dieting a lot, the X's and O's, and how to actually weigh and measure and track your food. We talk about something he calls the hierarchy of nutrition, inclusion versus exclusion, the keys to long-term success on any diet, and much, much more. Before we get started, if you haven't done so already, please head to iTunes, hit the subscribe button, and leave me a quick review. Also, if you're new to the show, head to the website, brutestrengthtraining.com, and sign up for the newsletter. That's where we're going to keep you up to date on all of the new podcasts, blog articles, videos, all of the free content that we're putting out. Enjoy the show. Zach, what's up, dude? Thanks for joining me today, man.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. This is a dream come true, and I'm excited to get started on this.
Hell yeah. So I've been following you for a while. At the Flexible Dieting Lifestyle. I think she sent me like a direct message showing me your page probably a year or so ago, just saying like, look at this guy's stuff. And we would just geek out over all of your food porn. And I, followed your page for a while and looked at all of the pictures that you were taking, all the recipes. I think you post some of the actual recipes on your YouTube page or social, and we tried one or two, and that was really like my only knowledge of you, like, and who you were for a while. And then having gotten to know you over the past several months, I've gotten to know this whole different side of you, right? This side of you that is an incredible leader and someone that's actually very, very thoughtful and very conscious about what he's teaching and why he's teaching it to people. And so that's really why I wanted you on the show today. I think you're incredibly knowledgeable about what you teach in nutrition, but the way that you're doing it and why you're doing it is really important to me. So I'm excited to dive into some of that with you.
Absolutely. I mean, the why behind everything, I believe a lot of people listening to the podcast have probably read the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and that book changed my life because you look at everything below the surface. You understand that people don't buy what or how you do something. They buy why you do it. And buy isn't just a transaction. Buy is believing in somebody and listening to what they say. I'm buying into what you say. And I've seen so many of the people I look up to have that. They always explain the why. And I will never say anything or make a statement if I can't explain the why. So if I ever say anything and somebody says, well, why? And I can't answer that question, I can't explain why, then I shouldn't be saying anything. And we live in a society where so many people make blanket statements without a concrete why to back them up. And I just want to equip more people in nutrition to understand the why behind nutrition, so then they can see all these diets out there and understand why they actually work. It's usually when people are promoting something, they don't actually promote anything that is really concrete, in the sense of like they'll find this little tiny difference to make themselves different, but then they'll hammer on that little thing, but then it's all the same principles. And I just want everybody to have the tools to be able to build the perfect diet for themselves.
Awesome, man. So I want to back it up a little bit before we get into what you're doing currently. I know you were a college basketball player, which I found really interesting because you are below average height.
Yes, very much so. I'm vertically challenged.
I think there's an interesting story there. And I know you had Yeah, I know you had a career-ending injury at some point. So give us a little bit of backstory. What was this period of time for you like playing basketball, and then what happened with your injury?
Yeah, so I'm 5'9", white guy, and playing basketball. All my best friends growing up were 6'9", black, all played D1, and it was
Six
just
foot nine?
6'9", all 6'9", 6'10",
Some
6'6",
solid friends.
yeah. So I it's funny, like I was at the Arnold this past weekend, and I remember about a year and a half ago, my first fitness expo was the one moment in my life that I actually felt normal, because my whole life I'm going to like these big AAU tournaments and playing with all these guys who are genetically gifted to play the sport of basketball, and I was not. And I was usually the only white kid on my team. I was usually the shortest kid on my team, always. And that's where I really learned to fight. Like really learned to be a fighter and to be crafty and be creative, because it's survival when you're fighting your genetics like that. But basketball was just my thing. Like, I was really good at soccer. I was really good at baseball. I was really good at surfing. I was really, really good at surfing. But I just felt like basketball was my thing. And by the 8th grade, I told him I had to stop playing soccer, and I had to stop playing baseball because basketball became year round. And I had to stop surfing as much because I was playing basketball all year round, and I was playing all summer. Summer was actually more important than actual in season for high school. And we just I played all the time. And then I got offered to play Division II, pay for my college education. And during my sophomore year, I had a career-ending injury. I tore my iliopsoas tendon in my right hip, which felt like a gunshot. It was like one of the scariest moments of my life. And at that moment, it was a crossroads for me. I had a few very powerful moments that really changed the trajectory of my life at that time. And I had a mentor of mine who happened to be a priest at the university I went to. And he asked me, he said, "Zach, if you died today, what would people remember you for? What would a random person say for your eulogy? Did you have an impact on this world?" And I was like, whoa, punch me in the gut. Because up until that point, I wasn't the hardest worker in the room. I would find a way to do the least amount of work to get a result. I neglected my nutrition. I neglected my sleep. I neglected my mobility, my strength training, everything. It wasn't a surprise that I had a freak injury. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a freak injury. It was my fault. And also, up until that point, I just neglected so many. I just wasn't a hard worker. I wasn't. I thought I was, but I wasn't. And I just wasn't. I abused my God-given charisma that I gotten from my dad, and my ability to just be a likable person, to get whatever girl I wanted, and just do. I abused these things, these talents that are now my greatest asset to be able to make a big change in this world. And that moment changed everything. So I was so deep in my economics major that I couldn't really change my major. So I graduated with a degree in economics, but on the side I would read nutrition, strength and conditioning textbooks, anatomy, physiology. I just learned about the body. I learned every facet of performance, and to understand that we are so complex. It's unbelievable. And I'm still learning so much. It's 6-7 years after that. And I became antisocial. I was the partier. I would literally, when I first went to college, I would go out and party. We would have 4:30 a.m. basketball practice. I would walk into my dorm room at 4:15, grab my basketball clothes, and go to the gym. No sleep, a little tipsy, and I would do that. It's like, whoa, like, come on, what are you doing? And I just didn't have. I was just an idiot, and I wish I had the work at. That's the one thing I look back on. I'm like, man, I wish I knew, and I wish I knew what I know now. And so I just continued to learn and learn and learn and learn. And by the time I was a senior, I was the strength and conditioning coach for 3 teams at the university. And I had started my own training business on the side called Genetic Potential Academy. We called it GPA. And I was training local faculty and staff and and athletes, local athletes in the area. I had about 50 clients that I was working with. And I graduated from school, and I started my own training business out of the backyard of my parents' house, and then ended up building that into a almost 5,000 square foot brand new facility that I recently sold 7 months ago in order to go full time with FDL. And we can kind of go into what that looked like, being able to transition with that. But that's kind of the backstory of where we are today, with a bunch of twists and turns along the way, a lot of failures, but a lot of breakthroughs as well.
I don't know if you realize, but I felt like as you were saying that, you're almost like telling my story, because in terms of athletics, right? Because I grew up doing exactly the same thing, where I would do just enough to get by and just enough to do quote unquote good enough. And I didn't realize it until years later that I just wasn't a hard worker. I just didn't value hard work like I could have. And I also can super relate to the injury, the feeling of who am I, like, and what do I have to offer, right? When you were first telling me about, I was so good at soccer, I was so good at this and that, like your face just lights up. And I can tell when you were a kid, like that's who you were. You were an athlete. I was the same guy. I was an athlete, and that's why I thought people liked me. That's why I thought people loved me and cared for me, and really that was the value that I brought to the world. And when I got back surgery in 2013, suddenly I didn't have that anymore, or so I thought I didn't have that anymore. And I had this really actually long period. It took me about 6 months to really get through this, get to the other side of noticing and realizing that I am so much more than an athlete. And, I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, et cetera, et cetera. And if all of those were taken away, I'm still worthy of love from myself and from the people around me.
I'm still going through this evolution. Like the way we score ourselves it's crazy. Like we're both type, like we want to be like the best at what we do. And I know that just from our relationship so far, and I've seen what you've been able to do. And I am the same way. And so we gauge success, and I know I still struggle with it by how our businesses are doing. And obviously the beauty of it is we have impactful businesses that actually help a lot of people, that is a gauge for our impact in this world, but still lose track on like taking care of ourselves. And okay, how are we mentally, and how are we physically, and how are our actual deep relationships, and are we defined by this? And the fact that we still are special, and we still are individuals, and we still are we are an end in ourselves. We're not a means to an end. And I battle with this on a daily basis, and it's something that I'm still learning about, and I'm still trying to. It's just like, those days where you feel like you didn't get a lot done, so then you kind of feel like you failed the day, but it's like not really. Like it's just like we're constantly evaluating ourselves. So I'm definitely, I have always had that in the back of my head, whether that wasn't being an athlete. And when that happened and I was no longer an athlete, and then I just, I had to turn. It was like a super low moment, but it actually turned me in the right direction, and it's given me a purpose. But I still battle with that internal, like knowing that I'm much more than just my business, if that makes sense.
Certainly. So how did you go so you started this gym business, you're really passionate about it. What changed?
So I've always been fascinated by nutrition. It's been something that I just loved so much. And as everything started to evolve, I started to see that the nutrition was so deep. It was unbelievable. I mean, it's always evolving. We're learning more and more on a daily basis. And it's still that elephant in the room. And with training, I saw it, but with the clientele that I was working with, I wasn't having to go as deep. Like, it was very basic levels. It's with our gym, I lived in an area where a lot of big time CEOs were retire, and they were my clientele. And I would work with them. I would teach them how to be strong, how to move well, and how to prepare themselves to live a pain-free and strong life outside the gym. But what I noticed was the nutritional aspect was where most people were going wrong. I could teach them how to move really well. I could teach them how to be strong. I could teach them all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And once you feel, so for example, like if I teach somebody a hip hinge or I teach them how to squat, once they feel it once, they don't forget it. Like, once you feel how to move like really well one time, they would never forget it. And then I could progress them appropriately. But with nutrition and the world around us and how food is just evolving, that's very hard. And I was passionate with being able to teach lifestyle nutrition and be able to help somebody be able to navigate the world, which is always evolving. There's always different types of foods being created. There's this argument about organic, non-organic, like grass-fed versus non-grass-fed, free. I mean, all these keto versus paleo versus, I mean, everything you can think of. And I wanted to go more to the root of why all of those work and being able to teach the nutritional hierarchy of importance. And that's what I started doing with my clients. It's the why behind nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was teaching them. And then it was just baffling to me to see, once they understood that, they were in control.
Right.
And they got results. And that was the big thing. That was everything. And I noticed, like, whoa, like Pareto's principle, like I saw that as the 80%.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that, and it was
tell the principle for those who don't know it.
Yeah, so you're gonna get there's the 20% of things that you can do to get 80% of the results. I mean,
that shows up in just about every area or discipline of life.
And so that's what I noticed was the biggest thing is if they got their nutrition down, everything else fell into place.
Mm-hmm.
They moved more because their energies were better. They slept better because their nutrition was better. They performed better in the gym because their nutrition was better. And their stress was lower because they understood how to navigate social experiences and still stay on track. Their stress was lower because they did not have a negative relationship with food, and there wasn't this binge, strict, repeat cycle. And so they knew how to have an ice cream cone with their kid when they went out, and they understood how that fit. They understood everything. They could look at a diet and be like, well, yeah, that worked because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And they were truly free. And so I saw that with my clients. And one thing I noticed with them was the fact that in order to get them results, a lot of the foods that they really liked, or people would have to cheat on their diet to have, didn't fit very well in the grand scheme of a diet. And so the idea that you have to cheat by having this, you have to cheat to have this food, was because those foods were usually very calorically dense and did not fit very well into the everyday person's diet. They would put them, I don't want to go too deep, but in the nutritional hierarchy of importance, calories in versus calories out determine weight loss and weight gain. There's correlation versus causation. People are going to say, hey, well, this causes this causes this, but it's the law of thermodynamics. If you take in more calories than what you're burning, you're going to gain weight, vice versa. Like, that's fact. So we know through the law of thermodynamics that calories in versus calories out are our main driver of weight loss or weight gain. And what was happening was with these calorically dense foods, you'd have to cheat on your diet to have them. And that's where the cheat meal thing came in, because those calorically dense foods would not fit into the grand scheme of your caloric goal, thus sending you in a surplus, thus making you gain weight. So what would somebody do? They would restrict for 6 days, and then they'd have a cheat meal or cheat day on the 7th day.
Right.
And in reality, in the grand scheme of things, it's a glorified binge, because they would try and get all of these things that they were restricting themselves from out of their system. They would get it out of their system. I was there. And so I was struggling with that. And so I realized, wow, everybody else is struggling with this. So what I did to solve my own problem was start to create what's termed macro-friendly recreations of these foods that would throw you off your goal or would send you into a caloric surplus and set you back. So there's this in the nutritional hierarchy of importance, we have our calories, but then right below that we have our macronutrients, and those are your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. And the beauty of it is when you track your macros, you hit your calories. And so with your protein and your carbs, each of them have 4 calories per gram. And then for your fats, you have 9 calories per gram. So say, for example, somebody's taking in a certain amount of protein, certain amount of carbs, certain amount of fats. When you add those up, you get your total calories for the day. And your proteins, your carbs, and your fats actually play a unique role in your body. They each have a unique purpose. So if you're just tracking your calories, you're leaving a lot on the table. So if you hit your protein is the building block of your body. It helps us build and maintain lean tissue. And that is not only for muscle, but also your heart, your brain, your organs, all of that. And those thrive on a healthy protein intake. And then we have our carbohydrates, which are our readily available fuel source. And that's a huge debate nowadays. Carbohydrates are not necessary. We don't necessarily need them. They're not life-giving. And there's this debate that we shouldn't take in carbohydrates, but I believe carbohydrate intake should be matched with the type of life you live. And if you're doing some type of high-intensity exercise, the main energy source of that energy system is going to be glycogen. So if you're doing bodybuilding type workouts, if you're a CrossFitter, you need to be taking in a good amount of carbohydrates, actually a lot of carbohydrates. And then we have our dietary fat, which is amazing for our hormone production, our overall health. And so there's this debate of fat versus carbs. And my thing is, I think we need to meet in the middle. Mm-hmm. I believe there should be a balanced approach because we shouldn't. So we all have cups. So I think that we all have a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of carbs, a certain amount of fat we need to be taking in. And I think that's a balanced approach. It doesn't matter if one's spilling over. And I don't believe an excess amount of dietary fat is going to lead to a more healthy individual. I believe that the stress that it causes trying to maintain a keto diet, if it's highly stressful for you to be able to do, it's going to negate the benefits of being in ketosis. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with going crazy high carbohydrate and neglecting your dietary fat. What's going to happen is you're going to lead to you being deficient in your hormone levels, and that's going to sacrifice your overall health. And I believe protein is generally constant. Protein's an amazing way to stay full. If I've noticed with anybody, if you're taking in 60 grams of protein a day, which is very low, and I get you to 150 grams of protein, the chances of you overeating is a lot less because protein's very satiating. It keeps you full. So that person that goes from 60 to 150, their hunger levels drop significantly. Why? Because protein is satiating. So when you control for all 3 of those are the top 2 at the hierarchy of importance. And once I was able to get my clients to understand that, and I struggled with it as well, and then I started recreating these recipes or these cheat meal foods in ways to where they became what's known as macro-friendly. So macro-friendly means that it fits into the grand scheme of my macros for the day. And that happens to be also, there'll be lower calorie compared to the real thing. So right. My main thing was taking pizzas, taking burgers, taking cakes, taking cupcakes, taking cookies, taking all this food that would normally destroy somebody's diet and being able to have them fit into their diet on it very easily, have a good amount of protein, have a good amount of a lower amount of fat and a lower amount of carbs to where they would check off the box of protein and be able to taste amazing, no sacrifice of taste, and then be able to eat 2 or 3 instead of just 1 bite of a regular cookie. And fast forward over the past 3 to 4 years, it's evolved over time. I've gotten very, very good. And the world is taking notice, and now we've been able to build something that is truly remarkable, that the biggest chefs and food I mean, the people that are reaching out and giving us credit for what we're able to do is phenomenal. And we've had so many people be able to thank me for, or thank FDL for improving their relationship with food. So what we do in a nutshell is we teach the why behind nutrition, and how I became very, very, very prominent was my unique ability to take the cheat meal foods and recreate them to where you can eat them on a daily basis. And so we teach the why behind nutrition, and we give recipes to where you wouldn't have to cheat on your diet.
Enjoying this episode? Hit subscribe. We have more amazing content for you every single week.
This episode is brought to you by ButcherBox. ButcherBox sends you boxes of meat to your doorstep every month or 2 months. These are 100% grass-fed, raised, and finished animals, and they are never treated with any antibiotics. I made a conscious decision this year to choose quality over quantity. So quality of movement, quality of relationships, and quality of my food choices. And regarding the food choices, I know that the decisions I make today are going to affect me when I'm 70, 80, 90 years old. And I don't want to wait until it's too late to start making the right decisions. So I know that I'm going to be eating meat regardless of what diet I'm following at any given time. So it's best to choose the highest quality meat I can find. And I know that convenience is a high priority to me. And that's what ButcherBox does. They send the highest quality meat right to my door, and it's some of the best meat I've ever tasted. Literally, the ground meat they send is better than most conventional steaks that you'll find in a grocery store. Grass-fed meat also has higher levels of vitamins and minerals, and there's more protein per ounce of meat. Some more benefits are that it helps reduce cellular inflammation, it improves brain function, and it allows you to absorb the nutrients in the meat better into your cells. It also has higher levels of CLA. With higher levels of CLA, you're going to have improvements in your metabolism, which is going to make it easier for you to burn fat. It's going to improve your blood sugar levels, help you fight cancer, and even reduce your risk of heart disease. You can check out all of the packages and even get a sweet deal at butcherbox.com/brute. And again, you get a free pack of bacon and $20 off your first order. Another thing that I consider when shopping for meat is the ethics of the company. And this is absolutely not something I'm perfect with. It's just something I'm trying to cultivate more in my life. In my first semester of college, I had a hippy-dippy professor that showed us the documentary Food Inc. And at the time, I grew up in Louisiana. I didn't even know a single vegetarian, much less consider it. After watching that video, I became a vegetarian for 6 full months. And over time, I just kind of lost sight of that feeling and that motive that I had to become a vegetarian. And so I started to eat conventional meat. And now I'm trying to get back into eating animal protein that was, of animals that were treated properly, happy Zen animals. And so really, I just sleep well at night knowing that I'm eating meat from animals that weren't treated like a piece of shit, right? These animals are all pasture raised. I don't know if they enjoy it, but it seems like a much better life to me than living in a cage and treated with a bunch of antibiotics and all of that kind of shit. So it just gives me a little bit of peace of mind knowing that I'm eating animals that were treated a little bit better. Again, you can find out more about the packages and get the sweet deal at butcherbox.com/brute. You'll get a free pack of bacon and $20 off your first order. I remember my first exposure to the term flexible dieting was about 3 years ago. I met Chrissy, our mutual friend,
Yep,
Chrissy May Cagney. I think my first conversation with her was actually on the phone with her because I was in the process of thinking about buying a gym, and she overheard a mutual friend of ours talking about it, and she wanted to get on the phone with me and like try to talk me out of it because she worked remotely and wanted to talk me out of buying the gym. And through that conversations, we talked a little bit about nutrition, which is a total tangent, but we talked about nutrition. She gave me her book. I read Flexible Dieting 2.0, and my mind was just blown. I was immediately like, this is the best way to diet. I have to try it. Can you go into like give people a little more basic foundation of what is flexible dieting?
Yeah, so flexible dieting is the idea. First and foremost, like I said before, it's understanding the why behind nutrition. It's understanding that hierarchy of importance. But with flexible dieting, it's understanding the variables and then creating a diet that's flexible to your life and to your goals. So we prioritize our macronutrients, our protein, carbs, and fats. So each person on a daily basis needs to be eating a certain amount of those in order to reach their goals and achieve their optimal health. Sometimes their goals don't actually achieve optimal health, but that's a whole nother topic. And so with flexible dieting is with your meal timing as well. So when you eat your macronutrients is based on your goals. If you're a person that is not training 3 times a day like a CrossFitter and you're just an everyday person, when you eat your food should be timed around your lifestyle and when it fits you best. And with flexible dieting is the fact that you need to understand what's truly important. So if I can create you hitting your macros on a daily basis, that's going to be the most important thing. And then when you time those macronutrients, the quality of those macronutrients, that's one thing that is a huge misnomer with flexible dieting. So that's interchangeable with if it fits your macros. And IFYM has become very prominent for, and IFYM and flexible dieting are not different. They're exactly the same. It's a priority of macronutrients and understanding the role that plays in you reaching your goals. But what happened was IFYM became super popular for people fitting in Pop-Tarts, fitting in as much junk food as possible. And They were like, well, it fits my macros. And that was that idea.
And that's how it's gotten kind of a bad name in some circles for people that really prioritize eating nutrient-dense whole foods.
Absolutely. And so I see flexible dieting as an 80-20 approach. It's sustainability over everything. So 80% of the time you're eating 100 minimally processed, micronutrient-dense, whole, just good, rich food that you would think were healthy. But no food is off limits. And so 80% of the time you're eating these foods that check off the box for health. And then 20% of the time you're eating foods that do not check off the box for health, but you're still hitting your macros. So 20% of the time you're eating your cookies, you're eating your Pop-Tarts, you're eating your ice creams, but you're still hitting your macros. That's the biggest thing. 80% of your macros are the healthy foods. 20% are the not so healthy foods. And so that creates that balance to where if I had somebody going 100%, so let's say they're hitting their macros, but I had them going 100% healthy foods, but it's causing them so much stress to hit their macros with all these healthy foods. That's going to cause, so I'm more worried about the stress that causes rather than them taking 20% and eating the quote unquote unhealthy foods. That makes sense. So I think
it's like, what's worse? Is it the sugar causing a little bit of inflammation, or is it the chronic stress that they have?
Yeah, I think they will have more inflammation from the stress that is caused from them having to try and go 100%. It's amazing. I mean, what does all the data show? How long we live is based on how much stress we actually have, and there's a good amount of stress that evolves us to be better. But if we're chronically stressed, that's what really is killing us. And I think that if we find this balanced approach, I mean, the beauty, everything we do, we go to extremes in order to find the middle, find the balance. And I believe that's exactly what nutrition is nowadays. We have hundreds of thousands of people who are quote unquote experts telling people to go in all these extremes because that's their way of separating themselves and making money rather than teaching the people the why behind nutrition. So then they can choose what works best for them. I want you to be able to take a little bit of paleo, a little bit of keto, a little bit of whatever diet you're doing and be able to apply it and know why they all work to where you can create something that's perfectly tailored for you, not anybody else. And that's what flexible dieting is. It's understanding the variables. If I am not a morning person, if I'm not hungry in the mornings and I want to delay my first meal until 12 o'clock, that's perfectly fine. And you just have a smaller eating window to hit your macros for that day. And I mean, that's simply it. So that's considered intermittent fasting and all. And now we have people wanting to do 30-day fasts and all this crazy stuff. And it's like, yes, but just understand the role. Why are you doing something? Is it sustainable? Is it going to get you where you want to go? And a lot of people have no idea why they're doing something. They're just doing it because they're desperate. And I never want anybody that follows me or what we do to not understand why everything works. I want them to be able to look out in the world and understand every single variable that's going on and be able to say, hey, that's why that works. That's not the real reason. Like what you're hammering on or saying is the real reason. That's not true. It goes back to the foundation of the hierarchy of importance.
One thing that you kind of hit on is this concept that I've really started to love, which is focusing on inclusion versus exclusion. 99% of diets focus on excluding certain foods. Don't eat sugar, don't eat gluten, don't eat dairy, don't eat carbs, don't eat fat, don't eat this, don't eat that. What they don't talk about, what all those diets don't talk about, is what should you be eating, right? They talk about all the negatives of these different foods and molecules, but they don't give people a system to follow to actually succeed out in the world. And if you focus on including whole foods, nutrient dense, micronutrient dense whole foods, and that makes up the majority of your diet, a little bit of whatever it may be is not going to kill you. I do believe that there are exceptions, especially when we look in the long term, and some people don't respond to certain foods well, but the vast majority of people, if they focus on including more whole foods, more micronutrient dense foods, are going to be miles ahead of where they are right now.
Absolutely. And that's going to lead into that. And that was going to be the next thing I was going to talk about with flexible dieting is it's understanding how each food sits with you. Like you're constantly taking data. Wow, today was good. Okay, what did I eat today to hit my macros? Oh, wow, I was really hungry today and I had a hard time hitting my macros. Okay, what did you eat today? And then once you gather this data, you find the foods that sit really well with you. Well, if dairy doesn't sit well with you, you get a stomachache. I don't want you eating dairy. If gluten gives you a stomachache and it doesn't sit with you, I don't want you eating gluten. But if it doesn't bother you, gluten is not bad. If it doesn't bother you, dairy is not bad. If you just need to constantly be, the one thing that I'm in this limbo about right now is, and I'm very focused on insidious versus acute. So insidious is small little decisions we make on a daily basis that lead to long-term problems or results. So insidious in the sense of like artificial sweeteners. So artificial sweeteners have no evidence showing in the short term. In the short term, it would take ungodly amounts to cause us any issue. But what I'm worried about, especially with the gut, is insidious over time, it wreaking havoc. And I know the power of the gut is unbelievable. And so that's one thing that I've definitely switched on is understanding like the long term. Not being chronic with anything I do. So not relying too much on anything. Cycling my foods, even if I'm eating broccoli on a daily basis, maybe instead of eating broccoli, peppers, and mushrooms, I'll eat zucchini, carrots, and another type of vegetable. And constantly cycling and never relying on anything too much. And that's, I mean, you hear those are all considered healthy foods, but I'm constantly just aware of I never want my body to become dependent on anything. And I want it to constantly be able to have new stimuluses or not know that, hey, this is coming in on a daily basis. Like, and I might mess around with a 24-hour fast. It's constantly varying your diet or varying your meal timing and varying everything to kind of give your body's alive. Like, it's like, whoa, okay, this is a new stimulus. All right, cool. So I just think we're one big experiment. But if you don't understand, so for example, if you're a scientist and you have data coming in, you understand how to read that data. If you're an economist and you're looking at economic data, you know how to read that data. But most people have all this data coming in and they're asleep in their office and they're not even paying attention to it. And the data is just piling up. And they don't know. And then they'll look one day and then they'll forget all about it. And then they don't look and see all this data that's like screaming at them. Hey, this works. Oh, hey, this doesn't work. And people just aren't aware. Like self-awareness is huge. Like people are not aware of what makes them feel good. So my biggest thing is,
just to be clear, he's talking about the data is your weight, your body composition, how you're feeling,
how you're
your
digesting,
energy levels,
how you're sleeping, everything is data. If you had a great day, sit down at night and look and see what happened that day. Like think, what did I eat today? How did I sleep last night? All these different things. Why was I happy? It's much more than nutrition. It's everything. We need to reverse engineer what's going on and understand how this plays a role in where we want to go, and then do more of what worked, do less of what worked. But my thing with nutrition is understanding how to understand the data and being able to make smart changes and being able to make sustainable changes. So, and then understanding the long term of something. If something works once today, will it work once for months and months and months? And I just want somebody to be an educated person in nutrition so then they can make those decisions for themselves.
So you've gone through this big evolution where you struggled with a bunch of different diets as you were kind of opening your gym. Yeah. You discovered if it fits your macros and flexible dieting. You started focusing on like just including macro friendly foods, and it didn't really matter how you met your macros. Yeah. To now where you're eating flexibly, right? Like you're controlling your calories in, calories out, your macronutrients, as well as your micronutrients, right? So you're constantly evolving and taking steps to look the way you want to look, feel the way you want to feel, and then set yourself up for success long term, right? For the person who's never tried flexible dieting or hasn't been successful with it yet, where would you recommend they start?
I think the biggest thing is the first thing you need to do is to evaluate how you see food. So I didn't really go into too much detail of like my evolution. So for example, when I first started, when I was 20, like 6-7 years ago, when I was 20 years old, I went on University of Google. I searched what the most popular diet at that time was, and that was the paleo diet. And at first it was a great thing for me because I started eating more whole, minimally processed, like healthy foods. But what happened was I had a negative relationship with food. It became the fact that like certain foods were good, certain foods were bad, and then I would restrict for 1 or 2 weeks, and then I'd have the most glorified binge known to man. I literally had a piece of paper and I was writing down, okay, I had this craving for this, I had this, and so for my cheat day, I would go to the store with that grocery list of all the foods that were that I had said that were bad and I had cravings for, and so I would have the most glorified cheat day ever. And I remember one day when I left the grocery store and I forgot one of those things on the list, and it was the scariest feeling in the world for me because I was like, oh my gosh, I almost didn't get to check that off the list. I was like, no, this isn't good. And so then I found the power of macros. I went back to the drawing board. I was like, okay, what is really going on here? Like in the deep roots of nutrition. So I ended up finding out about macronutrients, flexible dieting, if it fits your macros. And so I started tracking my macros. And what happened was I would fit in all the foods that were cheat meals into my macros, but I realized like those foods didn't keep me full. It was hard for me to hit my macros on a daily basis because they were very dense in calories and I would get only a few bites, and thus it would lead to me to binging as well because I was hungry all the time because they didn't give me much nutrition, they didn't give me much food volume, and so I was back in the same spot I was with paleo. I was binging again. And so I found myself in the middle. Now I'm finally there. But what happened was whenever I got lower on macronutrients, and if you've dieted for prolonged periods of time, you're eating less food to get to a certain body fat percentage. And what I noticed was those foods that wouldn't fit very well, I would not still be able to fit them in very well at all. And so I ended up starting to recreate them. And that's what I have my macro friendly recipes. But for the person starting out, I want them to understand, their relationship with food. What food? I want you to literally take out a piece of paper and write down all the foods that you think are healthy and all the foods that you don't think are healthy. And I want you to really understand that your body doesn't necessarily see a difference between the two. It sees a difference in the fact that one provides more vitamins and minerals, it provides more water, more fiber, some protein, some with more protein, some with not, versus the unhealthy foods don't provide as much nutritional value. But in the grand scheme of things, if I eat a sweet potato and I eat a Pop-Tart, both are very high carb sources. Your body just sees them as glycogen.
But as far as body composition goes.
No. So listen, what I'm saying is, for example, we have buckets. Mm-hmm. So we have goals for the day. A sweet potato is going to provide us with a lot more vitamins and minerals for us to reach our goals.
Right.
But both are very high carb sources. So your body, in the sense, at the very basic level with glycogen, so carbohydrates, let's say each of them had 68 grams of carbs. It's going to see both as 68 grams of carbs.
Gotcha.
But what's coming along with the sweet potato is more fiber, mm-hmm. more vitamins and minerals. So the Pop-Tart doesn't provide that.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to say. So if you're hitting your vitamins and minerals on a daily basis, the Pop-Tart isn't going to take you away from your goal unless that sweet potato was getting you to that goal. Mm-hmm. And it was getting you there. But if the sweet potato is spilling over your glass of vitamins and minerals and you've already hit the goal, it's not going to provide any more benefit.
Right. That is a huge knowledge bomb that I never really considered before about a year ago. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily get bonus points for getting extra vitamins and minerals, right? We just have to hit, and it's the numbers that we're supposed to hit are definitely arguable, but we don't get bonus points for getting more because our bodies can only absorb so many vitamins and minerals in a certain period of time.
Yeah, and so that's why the 80% fills those buckets. Mm-hmm. And so my biggest thing would be to get that mindset shift. And then the second thing would be just to start tracking your nutrition. Download something like MyFitnessPal, which is a macro tracking app. Start just logging your food in there and just get a basic understanding. And so my next step would be, and this is going to sound like, oh, I don't want to do this, but it's education. Get a digital food scale. Go to Walmart, go somewhere, get a digital food scale, learn how to log your food into MyFitnessPal and understand serving sizes. It's unbelievable how much more or how small a serving size is. You will be baffled. Mm-hmm. Your rice, your cereals, your oatmeal, all these things, I guarantee you're eating 2 to 3 times the serving size that you think you are. And this is going to be great because this old adage, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man a fish, he eats for a lifetime. So what I want you to be able to do is you're going to track with the idea of not having to track. I haven't tracked my macros in 3 or 4 months. I haven't used a food scale in 3 or 4 months. And why? Because I can eyeball things. So what I want you to do is you start tracking your macros and using that digital food scale. But every time you use it, you're doing it in the sense of like, can I guess this? What does this serving size look like? To where, what if I didn't have my food scale? Could I come within 10% of that serving size? And so you start playing with that over time. So if you start with the end in mind, you're going to be able to come to that conclusion or be able to not have to be at the mercy of your scale, to where whenever you go out in social situations, you can understand how to eyeball things. Mm-hmm. And that creates sustainability. And that's the power of getting started with this, is because it's knowledge and nobody can take that away from you.
Right. It's just building awareness, right?
Correct.
You're giving people the tools to understand how much they need to put in their bodies to feel, perform, look the way that they want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And another thing you're going to learn also is why a lot of foods are quote unquote healthy and why a lot of foods are not. You're going to notice like the foods that are quote unquote healthy, like your broccoli, your spinach, all these foods, they provide a ton of food volume for a little amount of calories. Mm-hmm. So you get to eat a lot for very little calories. And then you're going to notice with the foods that are quote unquote not so healthy, they do not provide a lot of food volume and they're very, very dense in calories.
Right. If you're someone like me that has a really hard time feeling full, you start to develop like a borderline sexual relationship with things like Brussels sprouts.
It's oh, dude, I'm same with broccoli. I love it. It's so true. And one thing that I've been working on lately is creating a lot of content around the idea of opportunity cost, nutrition around opportunity cost. So the easiest way for somebody that's listening to this podcast and they understand numbers very well is to understand nutrition as opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is an economic principle. The idea that if I do this, then I am choosing to not do something else. So there's an opportunity cost associated with it. So if I choose to use a certain amount of my protein, carbs, and fats to eat this, let's say if I want to eat that Pop-Tart and I have a certain amount of protein, carbs, and fats to eat that day, there's an opportunity cost associated with it. So let's say one Pop-Tart has 35 grams of carbs, 6 grams of fat, and maybe 2 grams of protein. Is it worth it to me if I'm eating 150 grams of carbs in a day to use 35 of them on that Pop-Tart and 6 grams of fat and 2 grams of protein? Because then I only have 120 or 115 left for the day to eat. And it's understanding that and then being like, well, I'm in control. It's just like your finances. So, or I could eat a ton of broccoli for the same, or Brussels sprouts for the same amount of carbohydrates. And I'll more than likely feel a lot more full. I'll be provided with more micronutrients, etc. So it's opportunity costs. And I believe that's one of the best ways to understand is whenever you can see that in that concrete number, you understand that you are in control. This is your choice. You are choosing to use that amount of your carbs, proteins, and fats to eat that rather than something else. And then you're able to be like, whoa, like that didn't really keep me full. And it wasn't the best use. So maybe if I'm craving it one time and I get it and I'm able to tackle that craving, it's worth it to me then. But if you do it every single day, I guarantee you're going to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want the Brussels sprouts because they keep me full and I feel better whenever I eat them.
So serious question. If you were to take like a quarter of that Pop-Tart and smash it up and kind of powder it up and mix it into water, is it still considered macros since it's just water at that point?
You just close your eyes and chug it.
Somebody asked the D once, if I only eat one chocolate chip, like if I put one chocolate chip on a scale, it doesn't register. So do I track it?
Oh my gosh. It's all, yeah, that's so fun. It's true though. Like there's like, if I close my eyes and eat it, I don't have
It
to
never
track
happened.
it. Yeah. On my birthday, there's macros don't count. Like it's just,
if I can't hear myself chewing it, did it really happen?
Did it really happen? Oh my God. It's unbelievable the mindless things that happen like eating wise. So how many people are actually consuming 10 to 20% more calories than they think because while they're cooking, they're eating or snacking on things that they're not even tracking. And they're just taking little bites here and there. Like that little spoonful of that peanut butter that you took, that was probably an extra 100 calories. So nutrition it's fascinating. It's more human behavior and psychology than anything because more times than not, we're eating not because we're hungry. We're eating because we're bored. And I notice the most busy people in the world have a hard time getting food in because hunger disappears when your body's focused more on finishing tasks rather than actually, if you're bored, you'll just start thinking about food. It's what we do. I'm so guilty of it. So good. Like I was at the Arnold this past weekend and we were meeting people and I was at Chrissy May's booth and we were meeting people for 7 hours straight. I didn't eat anything. I had like a smaller meal earlier in the day and I didn't eat for 7-8 hours and I wasn't hungry at all. I wasn't because I was so present and your body's just like, well, when you're present, you think like evolutionary, like if I'm present and I can never have a moment to not be present, why would I ever be hungry? Because if I'm hungry, that's like my body taking away from the present moment, like when a lion could probably kill me and I don't have time to be hungry at that time. And my body can just go onto fat stores and be able to pull energy from that while I'm able to be present at where I am. It's fascinating.
I don't know if you just called yourself a gazelle with the whole lion analogy. I'm not sure.
Something like that. Something like that.
So I've been out to eat with you, and I've seen the master at work. I've seen just like the level of control you have over your own diet.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are some of the, like a couple of the keys to long-term maintenance of a diet?
I think it's understanding what you control and understanding what you cannot control. So when we went out and got tacos the other night, I understood that there's nothing I can do about a tortilla. I'm going to eat the tortilla. That's a given. That's going to give me some carbs. So I understood that I'm going to get certain meat choices. So I ended up getting one with, I think it was poke. It was, I don't even know if I pronounced that right. It was, and then steak. Poke. And then one with steak and one with chicken. And they were topped with a little bit of vegetables, but I understand that most times what's going to happen when you go out to eat, it's the sauces that get you. They're so calorically dense. And I understood that if I can get the sauces on the side, I can understand and I can control that variable. And if I can get sauces that are not fat-based, the caloric total is going to be a lot less as well. So, for example, we had one of the steak one wanted to have a queso, and I said, "Can I have that on the side?" And then I asked them, "Do you have any just standard hot sauce or sriracha?" They did, so they gave it to me. I said, "Do you have any salsa?" They did. They gave it to me. So those are not fat based; those are actually vegetable based or water based actual sauces. And another one had like a chipotle mayo. Whoa, like that's a red flag. And so I was able to make it more balanced, because more times when you go out to eat, the sauces throw it out of balance. They provide way too much fat, thus causing the caloric total to go through the roof. Because remember, 9 calories per gram of fat. It's very, 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 very dense. And most sauces are fat-based. And so that's just one thing I think would be huge is if you get your vegetables, make sure and ask, hey, are you guys cooking these in oil? Mm-hmm. If so, could you please just use a cooking spray? Or could I have mine steamed? Just little things like that. And understanding that when you go out to eat, the people that are making your food, the easiest way for them to make it is to put a ton of oil on the pan. That just makes it so easy for them. And it's
tasty.
And tasty.
Right.
And most people are going to have a great relationship. But for people like us, if we want to make sure that we stay on track, that's just wasted calories. You would feel better if you didn't have all that. You're literally creating a fat bomb because you're getting all this oil at one time, so much dense amount of calories to where your body's having to digest that like really, really quickly. Mm-hmm. And it's just, that's why you feel like when you go out to eat and you eat like a burger, that's why people think burgers are bad. You can get lean ground beef, like a leaner, like a 96.4 lean ground beef instead of like a 75.25 or an 80.20. And it's not as much calories. It actually has the macronutrient profile as chicken. And you can have a burger every single day and hit your macros and be fine. And it's just little things like that and understanding like, and if you go out and you get a burger, know that if you get cheese on that burger, that cheese is actually a fat source rather than a protein source because it's full fat. So each slice is going to have about 9 fat, 7 protein. And so it's more of a fat source because remember, fat is double the caloric value as protein. So it's 9 times 9, 81 calories just from fat in a slice of cheese. Mm-hmm. So that's just little things to think about. It's just understand, control what you can control, and don't be antisocial, and just plan for it. And another thing too is if you're going to go out that night, make sure to eat lighter during the day. Mm-hmm. Save macros.
Right. Because again, that's another thing that you're in control of. You're
in control. So just control what you can control. Don't be antisocial, but just know.
That's probably not sustainable for you.
That's not sustainable because you're going to feel spite towards your diet. That's the number one thing that people have. Like they feel spite towards the diet that they're doing and they say, screw it. But then they feel guilty after they said, screw it. And they're like, oh, it's like a relationship. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I'm gonna come back, and then you're good for 6 days, and then that diet, aka your girlfriend at the time, pisses you off. And then you like, it's like no, it should be like that. So, but that's funny. I never have thought about my diet like that before. But
right. I wonder if anyone, as you were saying, like the different fat percentaged beefs. Mm-hmm. I was wondering the 80-20 beef. I was wondering if anywhere in the world there's a Burritos burger.
Oh. I don't know.
Which would not be significant at all, but nerds would love that.
Oh, they would. That's super.
That wouldn't be like if you found out it was 80% protein, 20% fat, it wouldn't make it like any more delicious, but some people would get a kick out of it.
If you think about it, the 96.4 is actually that ratio. So there's 23
calorie wise?
Yeah. Well, per 4 ounces is 23 grams of protein, 4.5 grams of fat.
Bear with us, guys. We're going to do some math here.
Yeah. So if in reality, so it's about 40 something calories from fat, 23. So it's literally super close to Pareto's principle in a burger. So a 96.4 is that perfect way to be able to hit your macros, and Pareto would be smiling and
nice.
he'd give you a high five.
Nice. So a lot of people that I'm sure you work with have a ton of motivation, right? Whether they've hit rock bottom or they've just tried everything under the sun and they just don't know why it's not working for them, right? They have a ton of motivation. Mm-hmm. And I know from experience, when I have that drive and motivation, it's a lot easier to get started on something and just drive toward a goal.
Correct.
What is your recommendation though for people that don't have as much motivation? And I'm going to use myself as an example. I look pretty damn close to exactly the way I want to look. I feel pretty damn good. I would love to get a little bit leaner, right? But I know that I'm also I don't have a ton of motivation to like get started on a new diet and make a bunch of changes and all of that kind of stuff, right? What do you say to somebody like me?
Honestly,
go fuck off or?
No, well, I mean, we all have a choice. Is it worth it to us? Is the opportunity cost worth it to us? Mm-hmm. And what I would say is, I guarantee there's probably a few things that you're doing right now that would change. Like I could change a few of your food choices. So for example, instead of a small little food choice you could do is you just look at something so I want to replace something with something that gives you the same satisfaction, but that takes away less macros. Mm-hmm. So for example, if you were eating cereal and you really like Cheerios, I would replace that with a puffed Kamut, which is a same cereal. So for example, for puffed Kamut, you can eat 4 times as much cereal, same amount of what you can fill up a whole bowl of cereal for 1 serving of Cheerios. So what I would do is just have you eat some of that instead of that. Or the first thing is, I want your same quality of life the same. But then I would just find out, I want you eating the same amount of food, but I would figure out how to sneak in little changes here and there.
Right.
So that would be easy, just replacements like that. Because most people, if you're having a hard time losing weight and you're not very motivated, let's not change. I want you to look at your full day of eating, what you eat on a daily basis. Let's just change the composition of those meals.
Right.
That you get the same satisfaction. You feel no different. You don't feel deprived. So if you're eating a burger with 80-20, use 96.4. Both 4 ounces, but you're cutting the calories in half. Mm-hmm. That adds up. If instead of using a huge burrito, use a lavish bread. Like just little things like that. Instead of eating a whole pizza, maybe make your own homemade on a flatbread. Like just little things, like tackle cravings. You'd be amazed at, you don't really necessarily, like diminishing returns. If I have 1 slice of regular pizza, or I can eat a whole pizza, I'd probably eat the whole lower calorie pizza because I just want to eat a good bit of it. And I think the biggest thing is just looking at the little things that you're doing on the day. Look at your full day of eating and see the opportunities that you have to be able to switch a few things here and there that would lead to you eating less calories.
That's honestly so helpful, because when I think about how I've been thinking about it is, I'm either going to like get full blown back into tracking, weighing, measuring, and tracking everything, and trying to hit certain numbers, or make no change at all, which is so black and white, so like,
well, that's how you are.
Me, right? Exactly, exactly. But I love the Tim Ferriss like really popular quote. What would this look like if it were easy? And it would be 1 or 2 like really small, high leverage changes that I wouldn't even notice. So as you were talking about the tacos, I'm like, I ate almost the same exact food, but I didn't make those changes that I could have controlled. And maybe my brain wouldn't have received that same dopamine hit for like 10 seconds as I was eating my tacos, but I would have felt way better afterward because I would have known that I'm making a decision for my long-term happiness and not short-term.
It wouldn't have felt like a cheat.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have felt, you were in control. When we cheat, we're not in control. So for example, in school, when you cheated on your test, your results were based on the other person's answers that you were cheating on. Like you were looking at their answers. It's the same thing. If I'm cheating, I'm relying on a restaurant cooking my food and making sure that it's exactly what they say it is. But if I can control all the variables, it's no longer cheating. I'm in control. So that's the biggest thing when people start flexible dieting is the fact that it's the easiest way to diet I've ever seen because you are in control. You understand all the variables. And that's one thing that people struggle with is they have a weird, well, we all are like this. If something's easy, we don't think it's working. And that's the biggest thing I want people to take away from this is if it's easy and it's working, ride it out. Like, don't be scared for something to be easy because more like to maintain your results and be a somewhat lean individual, a healthy lean, it's really easy. It's really easy. And if you can understand how to make some substitutions here or there, you understand how to collect the data and be aware of how you feel, you're going to be blown away. You're going to be blown away at now you're in control of something that I would say 99% of the world's population have no clue.
Right. I got a few rapid fires for you.
Absolutely.
And we'll get out of here. What book have you given as a gift most often or referred others to?
I Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
It
literally changed the way I see the world. Like literally it held me accountable. It held me accountable in the sense of like, if I don't understand what somebody else is saying to me, I'm going to ask why.
Right.
Why? Why do you say that? And if they can't answer it, they've lost my trust because you don't make a statement without understanding the why.
When you're able to tie and I couldn't agree more, love the book. This thing that my friend Justin told me recently really sticks out. When we're able to tie our purpose to all of our activities, we're able to sustain it for so much longer. We're able to do those things with more enthusiasm and vigor, if you will. If you're a CrossFit athlete, for instance, and you're able, like you have this deep sense of purpose that you're competing for your family, right? You're in it for your family. You want to make your children proud and you want to make them teach them what hard work means. And you just have this deep sense of purpose and you're really connected to that. It's not a chore anymore to do mobility work. It's not a chore to do technique work. It's not a chore to do all of the boring and mundane things. That goes for any area of life, right? When we're not connected to purpose, or if we just haven't done the hard work of getting clear about what our purpose is, that's when we start to give up. That's when we start to lose enthusiasm for what we're doing. And it's just really hard to be successful in the long term and to be as successful as we can be without that sense of purpose, without that sense of why.
Absolutely. And it's the scariest feeling in the world is seeing somebody on their deathbed and them knowing that they really they never figured out their purpose. And they literally didn't even think about it. They just went through life. And it's like, whoa. Like I want people to wake up on a daily basis with this sense of urgency. Like every single step of every single day, they're living out their purpose. And hopefully that purpose is making the world a better place and changing lives and leaving the world better than whenever they came into the world. And I hope that's the case. But as I go into growing a family, I want my kids, no matter what they're doing, just to want to have an impact and be able to find their purpose. That's my whole job as a parent. And that's what I want to do. And I want to have a wife as well. I'm single. I want to have a wife as well.
Single.
I want to have a wife as well that is purpose driven. That's literally my main thing is I want her to be able to wake up in the morning and say, Zach, I'm probably not going to see you for the next 12 hours because I'm really working on this project. and I'm just going to give her the biggest high five in the world, and I'm going to be so excited for dinner that night to hear how it all went.
I have a book for you on that. The Way of the Superior Man.
Oh my gosh.
What's a belief that you hold that if others held would have the biggest impact on their performance or life in general?
That's interesting. That you're special. That you have the capabilities to make any room better. I believe that every person should wake up every single day and understand that they are in control of how. I believe that the number one thing you should do is understand that the better you make yourself, the better everything else is going to be. And the fact that, like, I want you to have this innate desire that every single day I want to learn more. I want to be better, because every single time you walk into a room, you're going to be able to provide value to that room. And thus that room is better because you are in it. So I want people to be fascinated by the fact that if me and Mike are sitting right here, I'm trying to 51-49 him. I'm trying to provide more value than him. But in reality, he's doing vice versa. And so in reality, we're both bringing each other up because we're challenging each other to be better and provide value back and forth. That's the kind of thing that I think if you guys take and run with that, your life's going to be, because how many people do we know in our lives that are just takers? Take. I think that's the one belief that I think would change your life. Actually, can I add one more?
I'll allow it.
I think another one that changed my life when I was 20 was the fact that I changed the people I had around me. So I made this rule that if I hang out with somebody and they either did not provide value or I left the conversation and I felt like not good, they were on probation. And if that happened more than once, I would never seek to hang out with them anymore. And I surrounded myself with people of value. And thus that leveled me up and challenged me to be better on a daily basis. And I think that arguably is the best thing that happened to me, because that led to what I just talked about. Me being able to feel valuable no matter where I go. I believe that room is better off because I'm in it.
I like that. Yeah, our environment is the biggest predictor of our success, and our environment includes all of the people in it.
Absolutely.
Lastly, what is one action that you think people should take immediately?
That's a good one. I believe you should just for learning purposes get a digital food scale and start tracking your nutrition. Like if you're listening to this podcast, you believe in health, you believe in performance, you believe in all of that, then you need to do this if you're not already doing it already. If you're listening to this, there's no excuse. Like that has to happen. So that's my number one advice. Don't say, "Oh, I don't want to do it." No, you have time. You have time. You are valuable. This is something that's going to give you freedom for the rest of your life. And the amount of time it's going to save you in the long term and add years onto your life, arguably, if you understand this, is unbelievable. So my number one thing would understand serving sizes, understand your macros, understand. And that's going to lead to you being able to be truly free and have your nutrition actually working for you. And then you can actually start enjoying food and not having it like to suffer to reach your goals, because you don't have to suffer whatsoever. It should be something that actually improves the quality of your life.
And what he's not saying to go and start doing flexible dieting necessarily. He's telling you to go out there and start educating yourself, right?
So yeah,
become aware of what's in your food. I couldn't agree with that more.
Application. It's just like entrepreneurship. You can learn everything in the world, but you need to learn through application. Just track what you're eating on a daily basis. That's all I want you to do. I want you to not change anything, but I want you to guess how many calories you're taking in on a daily basis. And then I want you to track, and I want you to see how close you were. More times than not, people are not even close. Not even close. I'm telling you, don't change it, because you're going to know. You're going to know you're a liar. But in reality, you're going to know that you're eating a lot more calories than you think you are. So it's a very, very good learning experience, and actually gets the momentum started, because then you realize how much progress you can actually make because of how much you're not right.
Right on, man. Dude, this is phenomenal. Thank you so much. I think people are going to get a ton out of this. Guys, I'm going to let him plug his social media and stuff like that in a second, but please go check this guy out. This is he's got so many sexy food pictures and high quality information about I don't know how many times a week. Several times a week he leaves very long informational, like educational posts that people are just getting a ton out of. So go check him out and check out his website. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can, I mean, my main driver is Instagram. So you just search The Flexible Dieting Lifestyle on Instagram. That's my main channel. You're going to get tons of value in the sense of free recipes. You're going to get long form captions talking about life, talking about flexible dieting, talk about the experiences I am personally going through. You're going to get like, for example, I posted my 6 favorite things from Trader Joe's, my 6 favorite macro-friendly things from Trader Joe's, like all kinds of things you're going to get on my Instagram. And then another place is my website, flexibledietinglifestyle.com. That's our hub. That's where we have everything. And I believe those are the 2. And I'm not going to plug any products or anything like that. I just want you guys to shoot me a DM on Instagram and just tell me that you listen to this podcast, and let's just start the conversation. I pride myself on building a business around me still being able to engage with my audience. I am one of the few with many followers as I have that still answer their DMs, that still answer all their comments, that still does the engaging. If you get a message from me, a DM from me on Instagram, a response, it's from me. If you get a comment, it's from me. I spend so much money getting people to do all the other things except for engagement. So what I want you guys to do is shoot me a message. Let me know that you listen to this podcast, and just know that I appreciate it, and it'll truly make my day whenever I get those DMs, because I know I will. So yeah, that's it. I would say that's fine.
Hell yeah. Thank you, brother. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
This episode is finished, but your training journey continues. Head over to brutestrengthtraining.com/SSW and grab your free pack of 32 accessory workouts that you can incorporate into your training and start improving your strength immediately. That's brutestrengthtraining.com/SSW.